Hi there, I'm Shane. In this video, I'm going to be talking all about the Rode Wireless Go microphone kit. This is a very lightweight, affordable setup that's really targeted towards independent creators who want to have a high quality audio setup without actually breaking the bank. And I've been using these for a couple years now and I've really enjoyed them. And they actually came out with a second version of them, though this video is going to be only focusing on the first version, which is the set that I'm still using. So right off the bat, I'm going to say this isn't going to be an overly technical review. I'm no audio expert and I'm just an independent photographer and videographer. I mainly do weddings, my personal projects, and some small commercial shoots, and I use these for those applications, but I'm not an audio engineer and I'm going to be talking about them from kind of the average user's perspective. And hopefully I can provide some meaningful insight in my recommendations on them. Before I get too deep into the review, I'm just going to go over the key features. And this is a wireless microphone setup essentially with a receiver and transmitter, and conveniently the transmitter also has a built-in microphone on it, so you don't necessarily need to plug in a lavalier to it in order to make it work, and it's functional just as an independent pair. Though there are a few other cool features about it, that they have displays and have very reliable connections that are almost like the easiest thing in the world to connect together. So it's pretty much foolproof as well. So they're very reliable, affordable, and functional, which makes them a really great option for anyone that's looking for a wireless setup like this. Before I start discussing the audio quality, I'll discuss the build and the controls on these. And really overall, the build quality is very adequate, but it's nothing to write home about. They're made out of hardened plastic, which isn't seamless or made out of metal in any sort of way, and I wouldn't say they're weather sealed. However, they are quite robust, and I've tossed them in my bag and pretty much forgotten about them, and they have shown really no signs of wearing, and even the kind of transparent plastic on the top of it isn't even scratched, and it's had ample opportunity to take a few hits. So that's quite nice to know, and so that they've been lasting quite well. In terms of inputs and outputs on it, the receiver has a standard 3.5mm headphone jack as well as the transmitter, and on both of them there's Type-C ports for charging, which is really nice because I'm trying to get everything I own to use USB Type-C. And on the transmitter, there is also a microphone built in, which is pretty handy. And it also comes included with a couple of dead cats, which are pretty much the cutest little dead cats on the planet, and they clip on quite nicely. So if you're using the microphone in a little bit of a windier environment, this will get you slightly better audio than you would have otherwise. The way they actually attach to your camera is via this very nice system on the back of them. So on the transmitter and the receiver, it's both the same, and it's essentially just a plastic clip that has a little rubber pad underneath it and a little bit of teeth so that it can grip onto stuff. The nice thing about this is it also doubles as a clip that can slide into a cold shoe mount. So you can just slide it into the top of your camera and you don't need to thread it on or anything. And I actually kind of like the system better than some of the other microphones that I have that you actually have to kind of thread into the holes. And it comes included with quite a nice standard coiled cable to connect to your camera. And this alone is an incredible advantage to these just by how compact these are and how convenient they are to just simply quickly detach and attach to your camera. So it's nice for that respects. The big disadvantage of this setup is the fact that this is a plastic clip, so I could see some hypothetical situation where this could crack, though again, I've had no issues with it. And the other thing is that there's no 1/4-20 thread or anything on it, which is too bad just because you can't really thread it onto a cage or anything, making it a little less versatile than I might have wanted. However, that's not saying this is bad and I really like this design, it's just there's a few limitations about it. In terms of controls, it's again super simple. There's the power button on the bottom of both units that's identical, which you hold down, and if you press it, it also mutes it. And then on the receiver, there's a control for your decibel level, as well as linking it in case you want to link it with a different microphone. So it's super easy, but it also gives you the repertoire of things that you want. And then if you turn them on, the linking process is again super easy because they just flash. On the transmitter, it has the connection status, and then on the receiver, there's actually a little display on here that gives you your audio levels for monitoring, as well as the battery levels on both the units. So you can see how good the connection is, you can see the audio levels, the brightness on the actual display, and then you can control the decibel level. So you can set it to 3 settings: loud, quiet, and medium. So like, it's super convenient for that, and is just makes it so much easier to use compared to other like cheaper setups like this, because you can actually see a display on the unit, and have a little bit of control over the output that you have. So for that reason alone, I really enjoy using these. And with regards to being able to see the battery life, it's obviously convenient. It's not like it gives you a percentage, but at least gives you a ballpark to work with. In general, I find these last around 6 hours. Rode advertises it to say 7 hours of battery life, and I could imagine under ideal circumstances that could happen. However, I've never had them die unexpectedly on me, and I find that they're pretty reliable for that 6-hour period. And I've run them dry several times at weddings where I just basically left them somewhere, and I had an H1N plugged in to the receiver, and I just let it go to capture audio from like the podium or something as a backup. And these work super well for that application. So it's super convenient that they have the battery life on them, and the battery life lasts quite long for a product of this size. Most of the time I end up using these with a lavalier mic, and this is an older Rode mic that I have that I usually end up using. And when you end up just setting it up like this fits very nicely into your pocket or the pocket of whoever you're recording the audio from. And it's a very compact setup that's very non-intrusive on your subject or yourself. So that's also a very convenient feature about them, is just really they're small and they're easy to use. When it comes to the actual range of these and their wireless functionality, they're rated to go 70 meters, which is pretty far, but honestly, I've never tested it, and I don't see too much of a benefit in walking 70 meters away from a camera with anything between you and the camera, because honestly, in the real world, that doesn't really matter. In my experience, when I've been using these in venues and at weddings, I've never had them cut out unexpectedly, and the only time I've really notice them cut out is when I forget the microphone on a client and I just have the camera rolling still, and I'm like, oh, where did the audio go? And it's because the person's like on the other side of the building all of a sudden. So that's really the only situation where I've noticed an issue with it. I've never had interference issues from Wi-Fi or anything, though these do operate on a 2.4 gigahertz network. There's never been an issue in regards to that. So I find they're quite reliable, and I've never encountered a problem with their wireless functionality thus far. On a quick side note, a big pet peeve of mine is that modern mirrorless cameras have yet to introduce having Bluetooth in them to connect to wireless headphones. So unfortunately, there is no wireless audio monitoring solution out there. However, you can jerry-rig these so that they can act as essentially wireless monitors. So if you simply put the transmitter on the top of your camera rather than your receiver, you can plug this into your headphone jack rather than your microphone jack, and then you're basically set up already so that your receiver you plug into your headphones, and then you basically have the perfect setup where you're receiving audio from your basically camera, and they're getting fed into a set of headphones rather than the camera, which is obviously really cool. So if you're ever in a pinch and you need to have wireless audio monitoring, this is a very easy way to do it. Though obviously you're tethered to the battery life of your setup, it's better than nothing. So yeah, it's a fun little trick. Lastly, I'll discuss the audio quality, and again, I'm no audio expert, so I'm basing this off my subjective opinion of it, and I think it's pretty good. It's not like it's gonna change anything in your workflow. It's just reliably decent audio coming from a wireless setup. So you can have setups like this where you have a lav mic and you can plug that in, or you can just use this independently. And I'll include some audio samples here just so you can get an idea of how this sounds without anything attached to it. Getting started with the example audio though, I'm not sure if you could spot where I have the microphone. It's right here on my collar. This is why I often prefer using this mic in conjunction with a lavalier, just because this is obviously put in the most obvious location I could, but even when you try and hide it, it's certainly quite obvious. And like, obviously it's good to have the microphone built into the unit, but I often like just tucking it away in a pocket and having a wired mic on my shirt. So I use that for the majority of my videos. And I often record in this room these days, and this is just my little cafe. The acoustics in here are, relatively speaking, pretty poor. It's all hard walls. There is a carpet on the floor and it's a relatively small room, but overall it's certainly not an ideal environment. So hopefully this can give you an idea of kind of how it sounds when it has a few cards stacked against it. So I'm obviously outdoors now, and I'm using the microphone just on my chest here. I have the dead cat on it just because it's a little bit windier and you might pick up a little bit of wind. Hopefully the dead cat helps cut it out a bit. I just have my dog over here with me and we're going for a walk, but yeah, there's a lot of wind actually now. So I find this is where the mic really shines though, because especially when you just want a simple microphone that just you can throw on your body and not really have to worry about, even though this doesn't look the best, which I think I've already mentioned 3 times, it gets the job done. And the fact that the receiver has monitoring on it means you can very easily just make sure you're not clipping or that you're not too quiet, just at a glance. So I really enjoy using it for basically any time I need a wireless lav, but especially when I'm just making a video like this. So this is the last situation where I demonstrate with this setup, and that is just kind of the worst case scenario. I'm a decent distance away from my camera, kind of like the farthest I would go. I'm on top of a hill and it's rather windy up here, and I'm recording directly to the transmitter and I have the dead cat on it. So you might get a bit of wind noise again. But the idea is that this is just such a super simple setup, again, that you can just throw on top of your camera and you're essentially good to go with very little effort put into setting it up. And you can imagine I'm having a more commercial style video and you just want to get something done like, oh, here's a new car, or look at this wonderful house that I'm in. It's just super easy and you don't need to really have any stress. So for someone who's an amateur or just someone who doesn't want to have a setup that takes a while to set up or you have to explain it to a client, it just is, you throw it on them and you're good to go. So I think that's the greatest appeal of this. And it just is going to be a very nice, easy to use setup for even amateurs to try out. As usual though, what it comes down to is the price, and these come in at $200 US or around 250 Canadian, which puts them kind of in a weird spot where they're almost a no-brainer to buy, but they're still relatively expensive. I think for the price you pay, it's a ridiculously good value and they perform super well. They're reliable, they have great battery life for their size, and they just kind of fit into any situation you throw at them. So I have no real complaints about them. The only thing that could be improved, I think, is if they had fastening headphone jacks. They're very tight and I've never had something be pulled out of them before, but in case it's not fully put in or if it's a loose connection, I can imagine this being a point of failure. So if they had like a tightening kind of bracket on there, that would be awesome. Otherwise, really, they're great and I highly recommend them if you're looking at them. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. And if you have any questions about this video, please feel free to ask them below or comments. I'm happy to have a conversation about these. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. It goes a long way to help me make more videos like this. And I just really appreciate the support regardless though. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.